Every day, you and I get bombarded with negative news. And just like our bodies becomes what we eat, our minds become the information that we consume. If you want to stay positive, it's so important that you also listen to stories that inspires you and uplifts you. In this podcast, we interview world-leading experts dedicated to solving the world's most pressing problems. And if you stick around, I promise you will not only be as informed as if you watch the news, you will feel uplifted, inspired, and have more positive energy in your life. Welcome to Great.com Talks with. Hi and welcome. Today Great.com talks with Logan Albright, who is the head writer for freethepeople.org. And if you haven't heard of them before, they are a non-profit dedicated to spreading information about individual liberty and personal responsibility. And if you're new here into this podcast, definitely go into YouTube or your podcast app and press subscribe, because today we're going to explore how we can use technology and storytelling and social media to free the people. Logan, thank you so much for speaking with Great.com today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I made a short introduction. How would you describe Free the People for someone that is not familiar with your cause?
Sure. Well, as you said, we're interested in individual liberty and personal responsibility as an organization. And the way we try to promote those ideas is through visual storytelling. We primarily make video content, documentary content, and we post it on YouTube. And we try to tell stories about real people and about real situations that is relatable and that's understandable to people, that they can, process in a way that you wouldn't necessarily process like a white paper or a statistical paper, something like that. And to teach people that, you can be a lot better off in your life. Your country can be a lot better off if you adopt policies that favor individuals and favor localism and favor personal choice, things like that. So these are the kind of ideas we're trying to spread out there. We kind of all come from a little bit more of a political background, but over time we realized that really the way to influence the culture is to not go through politics per se, but go on a more cultural level. We always say that culture is upstream of politics. So politics and politicians follow what the voters want. They follow what the people want. So if you can convince people on a cultural level that these ideas are beneficial, then politics will follow in its wake.
Yeah, that's really cool, because there is not much of a limit on how much positive effect you guys can make when you create videos that becomes really important, that becomes really popular. And I think storytelling is so built into us as people. So yeah, I'm fascinated by that approach. So more concretely, what would a documentary look like? If you have a specific topic, or how could it look like?
Sure. We've done a lot of different issues, and we focus on shorter web video for the most part. We're trying to get into longer, almost feature-length documentaries. So we made one as an example last year called "How to Love Your Enemy: A Restorative Justice Story." And justice reform is one of the issues that we're really interested in. We think there's a lot of problems with the criminal justice system. It really doesn't work very well. And so we found this community in Longmont, Colorado, in the United States. And they've been for the last 25 years doing this program called Restorative Justice, which is a almost non-governmental, community-based justice system which doesn't focus on punishment. It focuses on restoring what has been taken from the victim of the crime, whatever that is. And the community gets together with the victim and with the offender, and they come up with a system of recompense that they're going to implement. And it's a wonderful system. It really discourages recidivism. It really discourages crime. It makes people be responsible for their own actions. And we found all these people doing this, and we thought it was amazing. So we went there with the camera crew, and we talked to them all. We interviewed them all, and we made a documentary about it. And it's about 45 minutes long. It's available on our YouTube page. And it's the kind of thing we want to do more of. It's one of the things we've done that I'm the most proud of.
Wow, yeah, that's super cool. So how is that being received? Like, I think I understand that punishment is probably not the best way, but then how do you make someone change their mindset from, okay, we're in this normal, just to describe to our listeners, what journey do you take them through in a documentary like this?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'd say you can't make people change their mind. People can only change their own minds. But you can give them information they didn't have, and you can tell them stories that they weren't aware of. And so, yeah, like you, a lot of people have this mindset where, well, the only way to deal with crime is with prisons. We got to lock people up and keep them away for 5, 10 years and then let them out again. And it's just never occurred to them that there's another way to do it. And so by finding people who are passionate about this and who are doing it very successfully, um, there's a couple approaches you can take. First of all, there's the data, which is not that persuasive to a lot of people, but for some people it is. And you can point out that the crime rate in this town has plummeted and that the recidivism rate is virtually zero. People who go through the system really are successful at becoming integrated members of the community again and not causing more problems, in a way that if you put people in prison and then let them out, they always cause more problems. So the data and the empirical evidence is one thing that's important. But I think more important than that is the more emotional story, where you tell people, talk to the people, treat them like individuals, treat them like humans, and find out what they're thinking, what they're feeling, why they think this is important. We talk to the people who have gone through the process, and they explain, why they made the choices they did, why they made the mistakes they did, and why they're better off now. And I think that connects to people in a way that it wouldn't just connect to them if you just gave them the data by itself. So it's not about making people change their minds. It's about giving them the tools to find a new way and to change their own minds.
I love your approach, and I think storytelling is so powerful. So now you're creating these documentaries. Where is the biggest challenges for you guys? Is it to create the documentary or finance it? Is it to make it spread and make people watch it? Is it to make people take the next step after they have watched the documentary? Like, what challenges are you going through?
Those are all challenges. I think finding the stories isn't that hard. There's a lot of great stories like this, and we have ideas for them all the time. Finding the best way to tell them is always challenging. You have to find the right people to talk to, people who are going to be good on camera, people who are willing to talk to you. A lot of people are understandably very nervous about getting on camera and sharing their stories. So that kind of production aspect is difficult. And then making it, we know how to do that, so that's not too bad. But distribution is one of our biggest challenges for sure. It's hard to get a lot of people to see these things on the internet. I mean, you have a platform which you never used to have, which is great. So we can host all of our content on YouTube. Anyone can go find it and see it. But getting it out to a wide amount of people is actually quite difficult and takes a lot of time and effort if you don't have a ton of money to put behind it. So that's one of the things we're working on. But I think we're doing well, and we're growing as an organization every year. We're getting bigger and better, and we're being more ambitious with our projects. And so I think it's going really well.
So what are you looking to do in the future? Do you have an exciting project in the pipeline right now?
Yeah, we've got several that we're working on. We're doing a series right now on the U.S. Constitution with a senator named Mike Lee, who's from Utah. And he's explaining the U.S. Constitution like one line at a time through a series of videos. And these are sort of directed towards young people and law students to explain the importance of why a constitutional limit on government power is important and why all these parts were put in the first place. So that's an ongoing series that we've been working on that we're really pleased with. And then there's another series that we've been doing on and off for several years called The Deadly Isms. And this is trying to break down this notion of the left-right political spectrum, because everybody thinks, well, you're either on the far left or you're on the far right or you're in the middle. And we think that's a misleading way of looking at ideology. We think that it makes more sense to look at it from a perspective of authoritarianism versus libertarianism or liberalism. And so we're trying to use that system to point out the similarities between a lot of authoritarian ideologies. The differences between fascism and communism, for example, are not that great on an ideological level. They both involve top-down control. And so that's a series where we do a lot of historical analysis and explain to people how a system of less top-down control and more bottom-up localism, people-focused society works a lot better. Both, on an empirical level, you can look at the countries that have done these things and see which ones are successful and which ones aren't. And just, we believe that freedom is valuable per se for its own sake. And so that's part of it too. So those are a couple of the projects that we've been working on an ongoing basis that we're pleased with. We've got a couple of other things in the pipeline. I'm heading up a documentary we're doing on education and kind of how the U.S. school system has been failing students and families, particularly during the coronavirus lockdowns. And so that's in the works.
Wow, so many interesting topics. I have to get into YouTube and start grinding after this interview.
Yeah, we do a lot of different things, and there's only I think we have 10 people on staff, so we all wear a lot of different hats, do a lot of different things.
Gotta be so much fun for you guys to have this community learning together. I assume you get the most out of creating these documentaries.
it's really rewarding. And like in particular, the one I mentioned earlier about the restorative justice community, like the people in that community are not necessarily ideologically aligned with us in the way you would think, but it was so rewarding to go talk to them and see what they're doing and explain where we're coming from and listen to where they're coming from. And you really meet the most interesting people. And although we're based in the United States and we're primarily focused there, we do a lot of international work as well. And there's a lot of organizations overseas in Europe or in South America that are doing similar things. And we love working with those groups because there's a lot of opportunity for growth and development and for making things better in those countries.
You mentioned before the interview that you have done a documentary on the Corona lockdown as well. So I'm curious to hear what is the Free the People's point of view on the Corona lockdowns?
Yeah, so we've been doing a series called Freedom Over Fear on that. And it's kind of looking at historical examples of when governments have used a national emergency or a crisis to take away people's basic rights, their civil rights, their civil liberties, and you never get them back once they go away. And it's because people are afraid and they're willing to kind of cede a lot of the things that they would normally care about in order to protect themselves, in order to have safety. And so we think that's really dangerous. And we've been talking about that using historical examples. But on a broader point, your broader point about the lockdowns, I think the point I would make about that is there's been an unwillingness on the part of our leaders to accept that there are trade-offs. Like a lot of us are economists by training, and we realize that when you make a decision, you're gaining something, but you're losing something else. And no one seems to be willing to admit that like just blanket locking down the entire US economy is going to have negative consequences. They only look at the medical aspect of it. They don't look at the economic aspect of it. And people have this tendency to think, well, economics is just about money. Money is less important than lives, but money is lives. There's people around the world that depend on the U.S. economy on the brink of extreme poverty. We've been reducing extreme poverty worldwide for many years, but now that trend is going to be reversed because people are not getting the goods and services they need from the U.S. because the economy is locked down. And so we want to look at the economy and the medical infrastructure in a more holistic way and say, well, you can do one thing, but there's going to be a cost to that. There's going to be trade-offs that you have to accept. And there just seems to be a complete unwillingness on the part of politicians to look at those trade-offs and accept that they exist. And we think a much better approach than having governors or the president decide what's going to be open and what's an essential service and what's not going to be open is to push those decisions down to a local level where they have the most information about what's going on. They know what their communities need, and they can make a more informed decision than just using a sledgehammer to attack this problem. Seems very foolish to me.
It's so interesting, the problem you're describing. It's the so many people are unwilling to look at the fact that not making a decision is also a decision. That
Yes.
just because you don't directly kill someone can mean that you not doing something can also mean killing someone. It's like that example, would you kill one person to save five? But both options is an action you're taking. It's just that one doesn't feel like an action.
Right, exactly. It's people have this myopia where they only see the direct consequences of the thing that they're doing, and they don't see the broader ripple effect that happens because of that. And part of our job is to look at the economy and say, well, okay, well, if we close all the restaurants in the city, what's going to happen? Not only are all those people going to be put out of a job, then you're not going to have those restaurants aren't going to be purchasing food from the farmers. What's going to happen to the farmers? Are they going to reduce their shipments overseas? That's going to help people not starve to death. There's all these ripple effects you've got to look at, and people just they're so reactionary. They just like, I just want to be safe. I just want to be protected, that they don't think about these long run consequences. And so we just think you need to be a lot more careful when you're making a decision that affects a society of 300 million people. You have to be very, very careful. And so the more locally you can make those decisions, the more individual action and agency you can give people, the better the effect is going to be, because people know their own situation better than you do.
I think the work you're doing with visual storytelling becomes so important here as well. So you also can speak in a visual and emotional language, right? Because if you as an economist come and try to make that point with a chart, you're not going to have any effect at all when the people who want then to do the lockdown is showing images of people and doctors and hospitals, and yeah, it's a losing battle. So it's very interesting that you're using this technology yourself.
Yeah, one of the things we're trying to avoid is a whole category of videos on YouTube that are like little infographics that are just, here's a bunch of numbers, digest these and change your mind. We don't think those work very well. So trying to explain it on a human level. I mean, this is the problem we always have, is there's this perception that the people on the political left in the United States, the more socialist and communist people, that they care about people. They care about the poor. They care about minorities. They want to help. They're so compassionate. And there's a perception that people who care about freedom a little bit more, like we do, are selfish, and we only care about money, and we only care about what matters to us. And that's like so far from the truth. Like the reason we're in this business is because we care about people, and we believe that the best way to make people wealthier and healthier and happier and give them agency and control over their lives is to reduce the amount of external controls that are being pressing down on them from the government or from whatever. And so I really want to, one of the things I want to accomplish is busting that myth of the idea that we're all just concerned with money and don't care about people. Whereas the whole point of our business is because we care about people, we want them to have better, freer lives.
How would you love to see the world move forward collectively in the next 10, 20 years?
Well, it's an interesting question because like right now it's been a challenging year for people who care about freedom, especially in the United States, because we feel like we've been going in the wrong direction in a lot of ways. All the lockdowns, all this economic controls have been bad. And so I guess to answer your question, I would want to see a recognition, a realization that we've made things a lot worse in the country than they could have been, and that we need to have regained some kind of localism and some kind of control over our own lives instead of outsourcing all these decisions to some kind of a savior figure who we think is going to save us and protect us and make our lives better, whether that's Donald Trump or whether that's Joe Biden. It's missing the point. We need to take control of our own lives and decide what kind of life we want to live and what decisions we're going to make and what kind of job we're going to have, what goods and services we're going to buy. And having those decisions kind of more in the personal level, I think would make everybody a lot better off. But we need to get over this fear. We need to get over this idea that some savior on a white horse is going to come in and just protect us. It's not going to work. It never has worked in history. And we have to take responsibility for ourselves. I'm not that optimistic that that's going to happen anytime soon, but maybe, if we see the negative consequences of what's happened now, maybe that will happen.
Well, I guess it's hard for you guys as well, because my assumption is that the more afraid people are, the more they're looking for someone that is in an authority that can help them.
Absolutely. That's been the real challenge this year is there was this saying in the United States where people were saying there's no libertarians in a pandemic because everybody believes, oh yeah, we should be free until they feel like they're in danger, and then they want someone to protect them. And I think it's the opposite. I mean, I think that the only answer to the pandemic is a more decentralized response. But a lot of people that I know and am friends with, I was very disappointed to see them kind of surrendering their principles out of fear. And so we definitely have to get to a place where people realize that, being afraid and just surrendering your autonomy to someone else is not the way to run your life.
So if we talk about personal choices, then what can someone that is listening to this as an individual do to be part of the change the Free the People wants to see?
Well, education is a huge part of it. I would definitely recommend that people go to our YouTube page or our website, freethepeople.org, watch our videos, kind of see where we're coming from. And then, talk to your friends about it. Like we said, it's a cultural movement. It's not a political movement per se. So I think voting is great. I think getting involved in politics is great if you want to do that, if that's important to you, fine. But more important, I think, is we need to change the consumer culture or the culture of, ideology in the United States and worldwide. We need to understand these empirical data that when people are freer to make their own decisions, their lives are better, they're richer, they're wealthier, they're happier, they're healthier, they live longer. All these things follow. And from that standpoint, just tell your friends, and don't tolerate it when people try to take those things away from you.
And what can someone do to support your organization? Is it mostly spread a message, or can they do something else?
Well, it's spread the message. It's watch the videos. The more views we get, obviously, the better. We are also a nonprofit organization, so we're entirely funded by donations from supporters. So if you are interested in what we do and you think it's a good thing and you like it, feel free to go to our website, freethepeople.org, and you can offer a donation. We're getting increasingly involved on platforms like locals.com and patreon.com, where you can be a patron and do a little bit more personalized support, and we can give you special treats for that as a reward. But yeah, mainly watch our content, watch our videos, tell your friends, spread the message. And if you like what we're doing, give us a donation.
Beautiful. Logan, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with Great.com today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciated it.
Thank you. And for you listening, if you enjoyed this interview, press subscribe on YouTube or in your podcast app, because that is showing the algorithms that this is important and that more people should hear this kind of conversation so we can move into a freer world. Thank you so much for listening, and we see you in the next episode. What is great.com? That is the most common question that we get. And the shortest answer I can give you is that we are a company that is moving money from the online casino industry and donates it to charities that is helping the environment. The long answer, unfortunately, I don't have time to tell you today. But if you're curious, definitely Google what is great.com to learn more.